Grand Commander Zekthos stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Endless Valor, and watched the human colony system appear on the display screens. This would be conquest number 74 for the Voctor Dominion. He had personally overseen 42 of them, and they all followed the same pattern. The pattern always worked. The Voctor fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a coordinated flash that lit up every sensor in the system. 147 warships, each one larger than most species' orbital stations, arranged themselves in a formation designed to inspire maximum terror. Their weapons charged with visible energy, crackling arcs of purple lightning dancing across hull-mounted cannons. It was beautiful and horrifying, exactly as intended. "Begin the broadcast," Zekthar ordered. His communications officer activated the transmission that would flood every frequency, every channel, every receiver in the system. Zekthar's voice boomed out, amplified, and processed to sound like the voice of an angry god. "Humans of this system, you have been selected for incorporation into the Voctor Dominion. You will surrender all military assets, all governmental authority, and all resources to our control. You have one rotation of your primary star to comply. Resistance will result in the complete annihilation of your species. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning." The message repeated in every known language, including the strange and varied tongues that humans used. Zekthar smiled, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. Now came his favorite part. "Target the third moon," he commanded. "Maximum yield. I want them to see this from the surface of every planet in their system." The weapons officer keyed in the sequence. 6 capital ships aligned their main cannons toward the small, uninhabited moon orbiting the colony world. There was a moment of building energy, a humming that vibrated through the deck plates, and then the firing sequence completed. The beams lanced through space, converging on the moon. For a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then the entire moon simply came apart. Not an explosion, not really. More like watching ice shatter, except the ice was rock and metal, and it was happening to a celestial body. The debris field expanded outward in a perfect sphere, glowing with residual energy. Every human colony in the system would have seen it. Every sensor would have recorded it. The message was clear. Surrender or share the moon's fate. Zekthar waited. This was when the begging usually started. The panicked transmissions. The desperate attempts to negotiate. The internal arguments broadcast accidentally on open channels as their leadership fell apart. Sometimes they tried to flee, which was entertaining. Sometimes they tried to fight, which was briefly entertaining before it became boring. But the humans did neither. The communications officer checked his instruments, then checked them again. "Commander, I'm receiving no response." "They're in shock," Zekthar said. "Give them time. They'll respond soon enough." An hour passed. Then another. The command crew remained at their stations, watching the displays, waiting for any sign of human activity. Zekthar felt the first small twinge of unease, but he pushed it aside. Some species took longer to break than others. "Commander," the sensor officer called out, "I'm detecting unusual activity at the human colonies." "Unusual how?" Zekthar moved to stand behind the officer's station. "There. Shutting down. Communications have ceased. Power signatures are dropping to minimal levels. Stations and ships that were previously active are going dark." "Are they evacuating?" "No, Commander. I would detect mass movements. They're not fleeing. They're just stopping." Zekthar felt the unease grow stronger. In all his conquests, he had never seen this. Species fled or fought or surrendered. They didn't simply stop. "Are they all dead?" he asked. "Some kind of mass suicide?" The sensor officer worked his instruments carefully. "I'm still detecting life signs at the colonies, but they're faint and scattered. not consistent with a living population going about their business. More like people hiding or sleeping. I can't get a clear reading. What about their military vessels? That's the strangest part, Commander. Their military ships are also going dark. Not powering down completely, but reducing emissions to the bare minimum. Some have changed course and are no longer broadcasting identification signals. Zekthar studied the tactical display. The human colonies spread across 3 planets and a dozen stations in this system. All of them were now showing minimal activity. It was as if the entire human presence had simply decided to take a nap. Perhaps their technology is failing, suggested his second officer. Some species have fragile infrastructure. The shock of our arrival could have caused cascading failures. It was a reasonable explanation. Zekthar wanted to believe it. But something felt wrong. He had learned to trust his instincts over 4 decades of conquest. Right now, those instincts were telling him that something was very, very wrong. Maintain battle formation, he ordered. All crews to remain at combat readiness. We advance to the primary colony world. We'll land troops and assess the situation directly. The fleet moved forward, a wall of metal and weapons crossing the void toward the planet the humans called New Svalbard. As they drew closer, the sensor readings didn't change. The colony remained dark and quiet. No defensive weapons activated. No fighters scrambled to intercept. No last-minute transmissions begging for mercy, just silence. The fleet entered orbit around New Svalbard, and Zekthar stared at the planet below. Cities were visible on the surface, lights still burning in some areas, but no movement. No traffic patterns. No energy signatures consistent with millions of beings going about their lives. Launch the landing parties, Zekthar commanded. I want full reports from the surface within the hour. Find out what happened to these humans. 12 transport ships detached from the fleet and began their descent. Zekthar watched them go, his mandibles clenched tight. He told himself there was nothing to worry about. The humans had simply broken faster than expected, perhaps collapsed into chaos, but deep in his gut, in the place where instinct lived, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. Commander Vixel led the first landing party into the human city. His combat unit consisted of 48 soldiers, all veterans of at least 6 conquests. They moved in standard formation, weapons ready, scanning for threats. The city stretched out before them, quiet and still. Too still. The buildings stood intact, undamaged by any warfare. Streets were empty but clean. Vehicles sat parked along the roadways, some with doors still open. Vixel approached one of the vehicles and looked inside. A container of liquid sat in the cup holder, still slightly warm. Personal items scattered across the seats suggested the occupant had left in a hurry, but not in panic. There was no sign of struggle. Spread out, Vixel ordered. Search every building. Find me these humans. The soldiers broke into teams and entered the nearest structures. Vixel followed one team into what appeared to be a residential building. They climbed the stairs, checking each level. On the 3rd floor, they found an apartment with the door open. Inside, the scene was unnervingly normal. Furniture arranged neatly. Lights on. A meal on the table. Partially eaten. Still warm enough to suggest it had been abandoned within the hour. Where are they? One of his soldiers muttered. They searched room after room, building after building. Every location told the same story. People had been here recently. Very recently. But now they were gone. Not dead. Not destroyed. Simply gone. Vexel's communicator crackled. Commander, this is Team 4. We found something in the transit station. Vixel rushed to the location, his soldiers following close behind. Team 4 waited at the entrance to what the humans called a subway. Inside, a train sat motionless on the tracks, The doors were open. Bags and personal items lay on the seats and floor. The lights flickered occasionally, making shadows dance across the walls. There are signs that hundreds of humans were here, the team leader reported. Heat signatures on the seats are still detectable, but the humans themselves are nowhere to be found. Could they be in the tunnels? Vixel asked. We've scanned the entire network. Nothing. Vixel was about to respond when he noticed something. He counted the soldiers standing with him. 47. There had been 48 when they landed. He counted again, more carefully. 47. Who's missing? He demanded. The soldiers looked at each other, confusion rippling through the group. Finally, one of them spoke. Private Kexfer, Commander. He was here just a moment ago. He was standing right at the back of the formation. When did you last see him? The soldiers exchanged glances. No one could say exactly. He had been there, and then he hadn't. No one had seen him leave. No one had heard anything. Find him, Vixel ordered. Now, they searched the transit station for 20 minutes. No sign of Kexver. No body, no equipment, no evidence he had ever been there, except for the testimony of soldiers who swore he had been standing with them moments before. Vixel reported the situation to the flagship. Grand Commander Zekthar's response was terse. One soldier does not constitute a crisis. Continue your mission. Over the next 3 hours, 6 more soldiers vanished. Not all at once. 1 here, 2 there. Always the ones at the back or the edge of a group. Always when no one was looking directly at them. The soldiers began to panic, bunching together in tight formations, weapons pointed in all directions. Vixel ordered everyone back to the landing zone. They needed to regroup to reassess. But on the way back, 2 more disappeared. One soldier reported that his partner had been walking beside him, had turned a corner just ahead, and simply wasn't there when he followed 3 seconds later. The landing parties from other sites reported similar problems. Soldiers vanishing. No bodies, no signs of combat. Just empty spaces where Vokta warriors had stood moments before. 3 of the 12 transport ships never returned from the surface. They lifted off according to schedule, appeared on tracking sensors, then simply stopped transmitting. Searches found no crash sites. The ships had just ceased to exist somewhere between ground and orbit. Aboard the Endless Valor, Zekthar stared at the reports with growing rage and confusion. 32 soldiers missing, 3 transports gone, and they still hadn't seen a single human or fired a single shot in combat. What is happening down there? He roared. No one had an answer. Then the problems started on the ships. The first incident occurred on the destroyer Razor Wind. Life support failed on Deck 7. The crew evacuated, but when engineering teams went to investigate, 3 of them didn't come back. The remaining engineers fled without completing repairs. Deck 7 was sealed and declared off-limits. On the cruiser Bloodtide, the navigation computer began giving false readings. When technicians tried to fix it, they found modifications to the code. Modifications that hadn't been there during the last diagnostic. Modifications that couldn't have been made without physical access to isolated systems. Security footage of the computer core showed nothing unusual. Just hours of empty corridors. More incidents followed. Airlocks opening without command. Power fluctuations. Communications dropping out at critical moments. Each incident was small enough to be explained as a malfunction, but taken together, they formed a pattern that Zekthar couldn't ignore. Someone was sabotaging his fleet. He ordered security sweeps of every ship. The teams found nothing. No stowaways. No infiltrators. No evidence of any intrusion. But the incidents continued. Late in the night cycle, Zekthar was reviewing reports in his quarters when his personal terminal activated on its own. He hadn't touched it. No one had authorization to access it remotely. But there it was, screen glowing, displaying a message in perfect Vector script. "You should leave." Just 3 words. Zekthar stared at them, his blood running cold. He slammed his fist on the communication panel. "Security to command quarters, now." The security team arrived within seconds. Zekthar showed them the message. They scanned the room, checked every centimeter, examined the terminal itself. Nothing. No devices. No transmitters. No way anyone could have sent that message. But there it was, still glowing on the screen. "You should leave." Zekthar deleted the message and had the terminal replaced. He tripled security around his quarters and increased patrols throughout the ship. But he couldn't shake the feeling that had settled over him like a shroud. They weren't alone on these ships. The humans were here, somewhere, watching, waiting, moving through the fleet like ghosts, leaving nothing but missing crew members and malfunctioning systems in their wake. And Zekthar had no idea how to fight an enemy he couldn't see. Grand Commander Zekthar hadn't slept in 2 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he thought about the message on his terminal. Every creak of the ship's hull made him reach for his weapon. His command crew worked in near silence, jumping at shadows. The disappearances continued. 5 more crew members gone from the Endless Valor alone. Security footage showed them walking down corridors, turning corners, then never appearing on the next camera. The gaps were only seconds long, but that was all it took. One moment a Vector warrior was there. The next moment they weren't. Engineering reported that someone had accessed the maintenance shafts on multiple decks. When teams went to investigate, they found evidence of habitation. Empty food containers of human design. Water recyclers that had been modified. Small devices whose purpose the engineers couldn't determine. But no humans. By the time the security teams arrived, the spaces were always empty. "They're living in our walls," Zekthar muttered. "Like vermin." His tactical officer looked ill. "Commander, if they've been there since we arrived at this system, they could have accessed any system on the ship. Navigation, weapons, life support, everything." Zekthar knew it was true. The realization filled him with cold fury. "Then we burn them out. Depressurize the maintenance areas. Flood them with toxic gas. I want every crawl space on this ship purged." The orders went out across the fleet. For 6 hours, ships vented atmosphere from their maintenance sections, filled them with poison, then sent armed teams through with scanners and weapons. They found more evidence of human presence. More modifications to ship systems. More supplies, but no humans. How? Zekthar's second officer asked. How did they know we were coming? How did they prepare? Zekthar had no answer. The Vector had appeared without warning, as they always did. There should have been no time for the humans to react, let alone to infiltrate dozens of ships, without being detected, unless they had been waiting for this. The thought sent a chill through him. What if the humans had expected invasion? What if they had prepared for it? What if everything that was happening had been planned? Commander! The communications officer's voice was urgent. I'm receiving distress calls from the picket line. 3 ships report intruders on board. They're requesting immediate assistance. Send security teams. Commander, the security teams are already gone. The ships are reporting that their security personnel were the first to disappear. Zekthar pulled up the tactical display. The 3 ships in question were light cruisers positioned on the outer edge of the fleet formation. As he watched, one of them began drifting out of position. Its engines had shut down. Get me communication with that vessel, Zekthar ordered. The channel opened with a burst of static. Then screaming. Weapon fire. The sound of atmosphere venting. And behind it all, a voice speaking in calm, measured human language. Zekthar's translator rendered the words. Bridge secured. moving to engineering. More screams. More weapons fire. Then silence stopped. The channel went dead. "Commander," the sensor officer said quietly, "all 3 ships are now offline. I'm reading life signs but no communications. No power to primary systems." Zekthar stared at the display. 3 ships. Hundreds of crew. All silenced in less than 10 minutes. How many humans would it take to do that? He asked. "Dozens," his tactical officer replied. "Maybe hundreds. Heavily armed. Coordinated. It should have been impossible. But it had happened. And if it had happened to those ships, it could happen to any of them." "Pull the fleet back," Zekthar ordered. "Tighter formation. I want every vessel within visual range of at least 2 others. And prepare to destroy the colony world. If we can't root out the humans hiding in our ships, we'll eliminate their reason for being here." The weapons officer hesitated. "Commander, the original plan was to capture this world intact. Its resources? I don't care about resources." Zekthar roared. "I want these humans dead. All of them. Charge the planetary bombardment cannons." The command went out. 7 capital ships adjusted their positions, their massive weapons angling toward the planet below. The firing sequence would take 20 minutes to complete. 20 minutes and the entire human colony would be reduced to molten slag. Zekthar watched the charging indicators climb. 15%. 20%. 30%. Finally, he was doing something. Finally, he was taking action instead of reacting to an enemy he couldn't see. At 45% charge. The power died. Not just in the weapons. Everywhere. Every system on the Endless Valor simply stopped. Lights, gravity, atmospheric processors, communications. Everything. Emergency lighting flickered on after a moment, bathing the bridge in red light. Zekthar grabbed his chair to steady himself in the sudden zero gravity. "Report," he shouted. No one answered. Zekthar looked around his bridge. His command crew floated lifelessly in the dim red light. Not dead. He could see them breathing. But unconscious. All of them. He was alone. A sound made him turn. In the shadows at the back of the bridge, something moved. Zekthar drew his weapon, his hand shaking. A figure emerged from the darkness. It wore a suit that seemed to absorb light, making it difficult to focus on. The helmet reflected Zekthar's face back at him. Behind the first figure, more emerged. 5, 10, 20. They had been there the entire time. Standing in the shadows, watching. Waiting. The first figure reached up and removed its helmet. A human face. Female. Young. She looked at Zekthar with calm, cold eyes. "You destroyed our moon," she said. Her voice was quiet, barely above a whisper. "You threatened our people. You came to our home with weapons and demands." Zekthar tried to aim his weapon, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. You're just humans. Primitives. You have no right. We have every right," the human said. "This is our space. You don't belong here. My fleet. Your fleet is ours now. Most of your ships have been disabled. The crews are alive but contained. Some of your vessels have been captured intact. We'll be keeping those. The rest, well..." She smiled, and there was nothing warm in it. "We don't need them." Zekthar's mind reeled. How? How did you do this?" "We've been boarding your ship since you entered our system," she said. "Your sensors are designed to detect large masses, energy signatures, life signs that match your database. You never thought to look for something small, something quiet, something patient. But we searched, after we'd already been aboard for hours. Do you know how much damage a single human can do to a ship's systems when given enough time? How many critical components can be sabotaged? How many crew members can be sedated?" She paused. We spent 3 days learning your ship layouts, your security protocols, your crew routines. By the time you ordered those searches, we knew your vessels better than you did." Zekthar felt his weapon slip from his numb fingers. "What are you going to do with us?" The human considered. "We're going to let most of you live. You'll return home and tell your Dominion what happened here. You'll tell them that humans don't fight the way you expect. We don't announce ourselves. We don't give warnings after the first one. We simply make problems disappear." She stepped closer, and Zekthar pressed himself against his chair. "And if your Dominion ever comes back," she whispered, "you won't see us coming until it's far too late." 3 months later, Grand Commander Zekthar stood before the High Council of the Vokter Dominion. He had rehearsed his report 100 times, but the words still felt like poison in his mouth. Of the 147 vessels that entered the human system, he said, his voice flat and dead, 63 returned. 22 were captured intact by human forces. The remainder were disabled and abandoned. Crew casualties were minimal in terms of deaths, but over 2,000 personnel are missing, presumed taken by the humans. The council members shifted in their seats. Whispers echoed through the grand chamber. "You expect us to believe," one council member said slowly, "that the humans defeated an entire conquest fleet without destroying a single ship in open combat?" "I expect you to believe the truth," Zekthar replied. "The humans didn't fight us the way other species fight. They didn't meet us in battle. They infiltrated our vessels, sabotaged our systems, and removed our crew members one by one. By the time we understood what was happening, it was too late." "Impossible," another council member declared. "Our security protocols are the finest in the galaxy. Our sensors would detect any intrusion." Zekthar's mandibles clicked bitterly. "That's what I thought." The humans proved otherwise. They boarded our ships during the initial deployment, before we even made our demands. They lived in our maintenance shafts and ventilation systems. They learned our routines. They waited. For what? For us to be vulnerable. For us to split our attention. For the moment when we were most confident. Zekthar paused. "They are patient in ways we cannot comprehend. They don't need to win quickly. They're willing to wait days, weeks if necessary. They let us think we were in control until the moment they decided to show us we weren't." The council chamber fell silent. Finally, the High Chancellor spoke. "What do you recommend, Commander?" "Declare human space a restricted zone. No Vokter vessels are to enter their territory for any reason. Add them to the list of protected species." "Protected?" "We're conquerors, not. We're survivors," Zekthar interrupted, his voice sharp. "And we will not survive contact with humanity if we approach them as we have other species. They are fundamentally different from anything we've encountered." He activated a display showing images recovered from ship security systems. Blurred figures moving through corridors. Shadows that appeared and disappeared. Crew members collapsing with no visible cause. "Humans evolved as hunters," Zekthar continued. "Not pack hunters who chase prey until it drops from exhaustion. Not ambush predators who rely on a single strike. They are persistent hunters. They follow their prey for days. They study it. They wait for the perfect moment. And when they strike, it's surgical, precise, silent." He pulled up another image. A Vokter soldier standing at his post. In the next frame, taken 2 seconds later, the soldier was gone. In the frame after that, a human figure stood in the same spot, wearing the soldier's armor. "They replaced some of our crew," Zekthar said. "Wore their equipment. Mimicked their behavior well enough to fool casual observation. By the time we realized what was happening, we couldn't trust anyone. We couldn't know which of our brothers were actually humans in disguise." The council members looked horrified. This was beyond anything in their experience. War was supposed to be clean, loud, obvious. This was something else entirely. Furthermore, Zekthar continued, analysis of the equipment and techniques the humans used suggests they've been preparing for invasion for generations. Their entire military doctrine is built around fighting enemies with superior numbers and technology. They assume they'll be outgunned. They plan for it. They train for it. What are you saying? I'm saying they were ready for us. Not specifically us, but someone like us. They've been waiting for an aggressive species to arrive at their borders. And when we did, they executed a plan they've been refining for years. Zekthar closed the display. The humans sent me a message before they let us leave. They said, if we ever returned, they would hunt down every Vokter vessel in space. Not destroy them, hunt them. They promised to do to our homeworld what they did to our fleet. And I believe them. The High Chancellor leaned forward. You're suggesting we abandon conquest number 74? That we admit defeat to a species that hasn't even achieved faster than light travel? I'm suggesting we survive, Zekthar said. The humans are dangerous in ways we can't counter with our current tactics. They fight in silence. They move in shadows. They turn our own ships against us. Unless we're willing to develop entirely new warfare doctrines, new security measures, new ways of detecting infiltration, we cannot defeat them. And developing all of that would take years. Decades, perhaps. He paused, then added quietly, and even then, I'm not sure it would be enough. The council debated for hours. In the end, they issued the order Zekthar had recommended. Human space was declared off-limits. The Dominion would seek conquests elsewhere, but the damage was done. Word spread through the fleet. Soldiers who had survived the human encounter told stories in hushed voices. They talked about the silence, the disappearances, the feeling of being watched by something they couldn't see. Other species heard the stories and took note. The mighty Vokter Dominion, conquerors of 73 species, had been beaten by primitives who didn't even have proper warships. And not beaten in glorious combat, but quietly dismantled like a machine being taken apart by a patient technician. 6 months after the incident, the Galactic Council finally received a communication from humanity. They requested a seat on the council and recognition as a sovereign species. The request was granted immediately. No one wanted to risk saying no. Ambassador Chun arrived at the council chambers aboard a simple transport. She was accompanied by a security detail of 4 humans who stood quietly in the corners of the room during the proceedings. The other council members tried not to stare at them, tried not to think about what those humans might be capable of if provoked. During a break in the formal proceedings, the Vokter representative approached Ambassador Chun. He was not Zekthar, who had resigned his commission and retired to a quiet life far from space. This was a younger officer, one who hadn't been present during the incident, but had read all the reports. Ambassador, he said carefully, I must ask, how many of your people did it take to do what you did to our fleet? Chun smiled pleasantly. I'm afraid that information is classified. But surely you can tell me something. Were there hundreds aboard each ship? Thousands? I appreciate your curiosity, Chun replied, but operational details of our military capabilities must remain confidential. I'm sure you understand. The officer persisted. The tactical analysis suggests at least 50 personnel per ship. Is that accurate? Chun's smile didn't change. I really can't discuss specifics. The officer leaned closer, lowering his voice. Please, I need to know. How did you do it? How did so few of you defeat so many of us? Chun's expression shifted, becoming colder. You're assuming there were few of us. That's interesting. She gestured to her security detail. I brought 4 guards with me today. Or at least, I believe I did. Are you certain there are only 4? The officer looked at the guards. 1, 2, 3, 4, all standing exactly where they had been. But now that the ambassador had mentioned it, he couldn't quite remember what they looked like. Had that one been standing there the whole time? When had that one moved? The thing about humans, Chun said quietly, is that we're very good at being unremarkable. We blend in. We become part of the background. You stop noticing us even when we're right in front of you. The officer felt a chill run down his spine. So when you ask how many of us it took, Chun continued, you're asking the wrong question. The right question is, how do you know how many of us there are? How do you know I only brought 4 guards? How do you know there aren't humans on your ship right now, listening to your communications, learning your secrets? She paused, then added, how do you know I'm the only human in this room? The officer stepped back, his eyes scanning the chamber. The other delegates. The staff members. The guards from other species. Could any of them be human? How would he know? Ambassador Chun smiled again, and this time there was warmth in it. Don't worry. We're not here to harm anyone. We just want to be left alone. As long as everyone respects our borders and our sovereignty, we'll get along fine. The officer nodded and returned to his seat. For the rest of the proceedings, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. That somewhere in the shadows, in the corners, in the places where attention didn't quite reach, humans were observing everything. And the most terrifying part was knowing he would never see them unless they wanted to be seen. The galaxy had learned a new rule. When humans go silent, start counting your own people. You might be surprised by what you find. Or rather, by what you don't find until it's far too late.